On the morning of the fourth day of battle, Arjuna arranged the Pandava forces in a vyuha shaped like an alligator, and from a distance it looked like a mass of clouds. On the other side, the Kauravas arranged a counter-array, moving towards their foe. And as the two armies came together, the earth shook. The chief chariot fighters of the two sides clashed, while the infantry fought hand-to-hand on the ground. Once again, a great din, a loud, continuous noise arose. The Pandavas had been cheered by Krishna after their battering at the hands of Bhishma Dev, and now they fought with renewed vigor. Arjuna fought with Bhishma, keeping him at bay, while Dhristadyumna and other great fighters slaughtered many enemy kings and their forces. Thinking of his vow to slay Dhritarashtra's sons, Bhimasena began searching them out, and as he ranged across the earth, causing destruction wherever he went, Bhima came across Duryodhana's chariot. Drawing up his own chariot at a distance, Bhima smiled as he saw Duryodhana's many brothers surrounding the king. Here was Bhima's chance to finish them all. Duryodhana saw Bhima facing him. The two enemies glared at one another for a moment. Then Bhima took up his mace, roared, and raced towards Duryodhana. With a wave of his gloved hand, Duryodhana ordered a large division of elephants to charge the advancing Bhimasena. Licking his lips and hurling his iron mace, known as Shaikya, Bhima leaped from his chariot. He ran straight at the company of elephants with his mace held high. Careering about, Bhima smashed the elephants, bringing them down one after another. The elephant warriors could not approach this circling firebrand. Even Bhima's terrible shouts made the huge beasts stop in their tracks and tremble. And behind Bhima came Abhimanyu and the sons of Draupadi, as well as Dhristadyumna and the twins Nakula and Sahadev. They all fired razor-headed arrows, which beheaded the fighters on the elephants. The riders appeared like trees on a mountain with their tops cut off. The leader of the elephant division, known as Magdharaj, goaded his mount towards Abhimanyu. The immense beast resembled Indra's elephant carrier, Airavata. Unperturbed, Abhimanyu shot a long iron arrow which hit the elephant between the eyes, penetrating it up to its feathers. As the beast fell, like a mountain toppling over, Abhimanyu fired another arrow which took off the head of its royal rider. Bhimasena continued annihilating the elephants with his mace blows. He felled them with a single stroke, and they dropped down with their heads broken open. Others had their tusks, backs, and legs broken. They fell down, screaming while vomiting blood. Bhima moved among them just like Shiva, wielding his Pinaka weapon. Bhima looked exactly like that mighty god, dancing his Tandava Nritya, the wild dance of destruction which comes at the end of the cosmic age. Bhima's mace, stained with blood and fat, whizzed through the air with a roar like the ocean. Like clouds driven in a tempest, the elephant forces broke and fled. Surrounded by the carcasses of the hundreds who were slain, Bhima looked like Rudradev standing in the middle of a cremation ground. Bhima roared repeatedly, his red eyes looking about for more enemies. Duryodhana foamed at the mouth. He screamed out to his troops, "Kill Bhima!" Then all the forces supporting Duryodhana turned, rushing towards Bhimasena, who smiled grimly, harshly as they charged at him. The advancing army was just like a tidal wave around him, but Bhima stood firm to meet them. The other Pandava warriors flanking Bhimasena blew their conch shells, roaring along with him. All of them joyfully met the charging Kauravas with volleys of weapons. They were like the seashore, resisting the surging sea. Bhima alone checked the leading Kauravas by ranging about with his mace. Again, Bhima created confusion among his foes. They looked upon him as if Bhima was the immovable Mount Meru, for none of their weapons seemed to affect Bhima at all. Most were knocked down to the ground by Bhima's mace, and those that struck Bhima, he simply shrugged off. Headed by Bhimasena, the Pandava forces crushed the Kaurava army like an elephant crushing a cluster of reeds. With one blow from his mace, Bhimasena would destroy a chariot along with its charioteer and the warrior fighting on its terrace. And as Bhimasena roved about like a tornado, the Kaurava soldiers turned their eyes away from Bhima in utter horror. Now surrounded by many of his brothers, Duryodhana roared out a challenge. But with a grim smile, Bhima glared at him. Seeing the prince and his brothers mounted on their chariots, Bhimasena quickly signaled to his charioteer to bring over his own chariot. Jumping aboard, Bhima rushed at his foes. And as he approached them, Duryodhana and his brother Nandaka fired arrows at Bhima, wounding both him and his charioteer Vishoka. They cut Bhimasena's bow apart, and it fell in pieces to the floor of his chariot. Unable to tolerate their attack, Bhimasena took up another bow, which was as tall as a man. Releasing an arrow fitted with a horseshoe head, Bhima cut apart Duryodhana's buffalo horn bow. Excited to the highest pitch of his anger, Duryodhana took hold of another bow from the many lying in his chariot. Instantly, Duryodhana fired at Bhimasena a long hammer-headed arrow which resembled a bludgeon. It blazed through the air, striking Bhima full on the chest. Now rendered senseless by the blow, Bhima fell to his knees for some moments. Meanwhile, the Pandava forces supporting Bhimasena poured upon Duryodhana a relentless shower of arrows. As Duryodhana warded off the attack, Bhima regained his senses and sent up a shout. Quickly he pierced Duryodhana with 8 swift shafts. As Duryodhana's brothers converged upon him, Bhima licked the corners of his mouth like a hungry wolf. 14 of Dhritarashtra's sons surrounded Bhimasena all at once, hurling countless arrows and other weapons at his chariot. Laughing amid their furious assault, Bhimasena swiftly fixed razor-headed shafts onto his bow. Sending the arrows to all sides with deadly accuracy, Bhima cut off his opponents' heads, one after another. Duryodhana looked on helplessly as his brothers were slain like a herd of deer killed by a lion. Their beautiful helmeted heads, adorned with golden earrings, rolled in the mud, and within a short time, all 14 were killed, while the rest of the brothers turned and fled. Bhishma then came up to support Duryodhan, and he shouted out commands to the army. Bhima is wantonly slaying the king's sons, although they are accomplished in arms and are courageous. Now, quickly fight with this son of Pandu before Bhima annihilates all of our princes. The battle raged on as the warriors of both sides came together, matching their prowess and their weapons. And as evening approached, another great carnage was wrought among the Kauravas by Ghatotkacha and his Rakshasa followers, whose strength increased with the onset of evening. Now, seeing his troops receiving the worst end of the fight, Bhishma blew his conch shell, ordering the army to withdraw. And as the afflicted Kaurava forces left the battlefield, the victorious Pandavas cheered. Ashamed and dispirited, the Kauravas went back to their encampment. On their side, the Pandavas, cheerful despite their wounds, returned to their camp, with Bhima and Ghatotkacha at their head. They praised and worshipped their two heroes who had caused such a destruction among the Kauravas. Dhritarashtra wept when he heard about the death of his sons. "O Sanjaya, I am indeed afraid. Why, I'm amazed to hear of Bhima's godlike prowess. Hearing also of my son's humiliation, I am burning with anxiety. Oh, what will the outcome of this war be? Now I remember only Vidura's prophecies. By the influence of destiny, it seems Vidura's words will prove true. The Pandava heroes are emerging successful, even though our forces, headed by Bhishma and Drona, appeared so invincible. What austerities have they performed? What knowledge did they cultivate? What boons have been bestowed upon them? Alas, my sons are doomed." Dhritarashtra began to wail. Sanjaya consoled him, but the king continued to weep for some time. Struggling to regain his composure, Dhritarashtra clutched the arms of his golden throne and continued to speak. "Oh, I am being chastised by destiny. Tell me, Sanjaya, why are my sons being killed while the Pandavas survive? I cannot see any end to this ocean of distress into which I am now plunged. I am like a man who desires to swim across the ocean. No doubt Bhima will slay all my sons. Oh, Sanjaya, tell me what Duryodhan and his generals are doing as a result of the Pandavas' victory." Sanjaya sat at the king's feet with his eyes closed. He could see everything occurring on the battlefield in both camps. Visualizing the scene in Duryodhana's tent, Sanjaya said, "Listen carefully, O king, and I shall describe everything. What is the use of hoping to be victorious? You have already been told so many times about the position of the Pandavas. Those heroic men live only for the pleasure of Krishna, and the universe itself depends on the will of Krishna. Your sons are wicked and have perpetrated numerous ills upon their Pandava cousins. Now they are reaping the bitter fruits." Sanjaya then continued his description of the battle. Duryodhana entered his tent with a heavy heart. Tens of thousands of his troops lay dead on the battlefield, and Bhimasena had killed 14 of his brothers. Tears of grief and frustration ran down Duryodhana's face as he took his seat among his counselors. Turning to Bhishma Dev, Duryodhana spoke in a voice laden with sorrow. "O grandsire, on my side I have you, Drona, Shalya, Kripa, Kritavarma, Ashvatthama, and many other warriors incapable of being defeated. All of you are ready to lay down your lives for my sake. Our numbers are far superior to those of the Pandavas. So in such circumstances, I just cannot understand how we can be suffering at their hands. How is it, O hero, that we are being overcome? What is the secret of their success?" Laying his silver helmet by his side, Bhishma turned and looked at Duryodhana. "O king, I will explain once again why we cannot defeat the Pandavas. For your own good, you have repeatedly been counseled to seek peace with them. But you have chosen to ignore those instructions. Therefore, now you will have to suffer, as all your counselors predicted. I have cried myself hoarse trying to make you see sense. What more do you want me to say? However, because I desire your welfare and the welfare of your brothers, I will try one more time." Bhishma felt his compassion stir for the grieving Duryodhana, who sat weeping as he remembered his brothers, relatives, and friends who had died for him. Although the prince had always scorned his well-wishers' advice, Bhishma hoped that Duryodhana's misery would make him more receptive. The Kuru commander waited until he had the attention of all the kings present. Then Bhishma Dev spoke in a loud voice. "O Lord of the earth, there was not, there is not, and there will never be any person who can slay the Pandavas while they are protected by Krishna. I will describe to you an ancient history which I heard when I resided in heaven with my mother, Ganga. Once, Lord Brahmaji was sitting in his assembly with the gods. At that time, Goddess Bhumi came to him crying. She said she was afflicted by the sinful acts of the demons and Danavas, all of whom had taken birth on earth. She thus sought shelter of the unborn Creator and prayed, "O my Lord, all the mighty and wicked Daityas and Danavas, whom the gods slew in battle, have now appeared on earth as kings and warriors, and I can no longer bear the burden of such cruel men who rape and plunder my resources just for their own selfish pleasure." Feeling compassion for Bhumi Devi, Lord Brahma, accompanied by the other demigods, went at once to the limitless milk ocean, where the inconceivable Vishnu lies. After offering prayers to the Supreme Personality, Brahma told him of the earth's plight. Brahmaji then heard Vishnu speak to him from within the core of his heart, where the Lord ever resides as the supersoul of all beings. The Lord told Brahma that he himself would soon appear on earth just to destroy the demons. His personal servants would incarnate along with him. So all the demigods should expand themselves by their mystic power and take birth on earth. Assisted by all of them, the Lord would execute his divine plan for the salvation of the earth. Bhishma paused and looked at Duryodhana. He knew the Kaurava cared little for histories, although Duryodhana was prepared to accept that Krishna or Vishnu was indeed a powerful being who acted for the good of the demigods. Duryodhana could not accept the identity of Vishnu as the Supreme Lord. Duryodhana was not a religious man in that sense. Despite performing his religious duty as a Kshatriya, Duryodhana had no concept of serving and pleasing a god who controlled everything. No, he believed in his own power. Now, in a moment of distress, where it was obvious that Duryodhana's own power was limited, Bhishma hoped to find Duryodhana a little more receptive and open. So Bhishma went on addressing the grieving prince. Try to understand that eternal and indescribable Lord Vishnu has now appeared as Krishna. Indeed, it is Krishna who is the source of Vishnu. Although there is no difference between the two personalities. O Duryodhana, you have already heard that Krishna and Arjuna are the two ancient rishis, Narayana and Nara. And also you should understand that the many kings and Kshatriyas fighting with them are expansions of the gods. The Pandavas themselves are all former Indras from different ages. Through them, Krishna will execute his divine plan to kill all the demons who have amassed as your army. O king, Krishna's will is infallible. Krishna is the supreme mystery. Krishna is the supreme shelter. Krishna is the supreme glory. Do not disregard Krishna, thinking him to be an ordinary man. Instead, you should worship that undeteriorating being of endless energies. Yes, the wise say that one who thinks of Krishna to be an ordinary man is but a fool and a sinner. Bhishma stopped speaking, and Duryodhana sat in thought. It was hard for him to accept that Krishna was the all-powerful supreme being. Certainly he was an extraordinarily powerful person. But God? Could any being lay claim to possessing such power? Some great force or power lay beyond everything, that was sure. But how could it be a person? And how could that person be Krishna, who had sided with his foes? After all, was he, Duryodhana, king of the Kurus, really such an irreligious person? Everyone condemned him as such, but he had always done his duty and tried to rule the people with justice. If there was a God, why should he be antagonistic towards him? And if Krishna was God, it would certainly explain why the Pandavas proved to be so difficult to overpower. But why was Krishna favoring Pandu's sons? All right, tell me more about Krishna. I always hear him spoken of as the highest being, O grandsire. I desire to know all about Krishna's position and his glory. Bhishma then described Krishna's opulence as he had heard it from Narada, Vyas, Markandeya, and Parashuram. All of these wise sages recognize and accept Krishna's divinity. They consider Krishna to be the master and sustainer of all beings. Krishna is everyone's well-wisher and friend, but you do not see Krishna as such. O king, for this reason I consider you to be a Rakshasa with wicked heart and mind. You are immersed in ignorance, absorbed only in thoughts of selfish happiness. Thus, you cannot know Krishna. Krishna can only be known by those who are free from lust, greed, and anger, and those who realize themselves to be Krishna's eternal servant. O king, try to see things in this way, for that alone will lead to everlasting happiness. Make peace and live happily with your Pandava cousins. You cannot win this war. Your enmity towards Krishna and the Pandavas will only result in suffering and defeat. Hearing Bhishma speak at length about Krishna, many of the kings surrounding Duryodhana began to regard Krishna as the supreme person. Even Duryodhana began to wonder. Perhaps Krishna was something more than just a human being. Maybe he was even higher than a celestial. But it was too late to turn back from the fight now. Whoever Krishna was, the Pandavas were Duryodhana's enemies. He would give them nothing. If they wanted the kingdom, they would have to fight for it. Even if their army was comprised of expansions of the gods, Duryodhana's forces would be empowered by the Danavas, whose power was equal to that of the gods. Duryodhana dismissed the assembly and went to bed. But before laying down to sleep, he bowed down to Krishna. If that Yadu hero was actually the supreme, then it would do no harm to offer him some respect. Duryodhana thought that perhaps his own fortunes might change. Lying upon his milk-white silk sheets, Duryodhana then slept soundly.